So welcome to another Tipping Points, where our mission is to seek truth and spread love. And one of the ways that we endeavor to do this is to bring you current events, but analyze them maybe from a different angle, from a way that you wouldn't get at any other news outlet. And I've been kind of sick the last couple of days. Literally, I'm still pretty sick. And I honestly believe that part of this, the reason I caught this cold, is because of the way I've been feeling emotionally. Our emotions, of course, have a connection to our physical well-being. And as I'm sure you know, there was another unthinkable act in Texas, at this Baptist church. But the residue of the Las Vegas shooting has still been on my mind and my heart. And then we had the New York truck attack in the streets of New York City a few days ago, and then the shooting in Texas, and then I got sick. And I don't think it was a coincidence because of the way I was feeling inside. But there's one crazy thing that kind of ties all of these events together. I was reminded of a movie I once saw with Dennis Quaid. He was playing a detective, and he was trying to figure out who was behind these murders, a serial killer. And when he found the murder, it was a teenage girl who he thought was a victim because the teenage girl's mother was murdered. As it turned out, she had killed her own mother and was a part of several other murders. Well, he discovers it was her and takes her in for questioning. And when he begins to question her, this teenage girl looks at him and says to him with a kind of cockiness and bravado and almost joy. She looks at and says to him, "You thought I was just some sad, abused, lonely girl. What do you think of me now?" And Dennis Quaid, as the detective, looks at her and says, "I think you're sick and evil." Actually, no, that's not what he said at all. But it's what you think he's going to say, and it's kind of what you want him to say. What he actually said was, after she said to him, "What do you think of me now?" he said something like this: "I think you're a sad, lonely, abused girl who needs my compassion." And that's what ties these three unthinkable acts together, and any act like them. I think it's what made me sick, is because inside of me, I wanted to respond, and I was responding in a subtle way. I was responding to these events the way that we would think this actor would respond to this girl. I was responding inside of me with this feeling of, "You're sick and evil." And you don't, and underneath that is, you don't deserve anyone's compassion. But that feeling inside of me, that residue that I was carrying with me, it made me sick. Literally. The last few days I've been very sick. So what ties all these acts together, the crazy thing that ties them all together, is that inside of us, and I think it's the only way that we can create change in our hearts and in the world, is to respond in a crazy way. And crazy simply means different from how the rest of the world or we might typically do it. And that is to do it as like this detective character in this movie. When we think of these events, number one, and of course we did a whole video on it, is to have compassion for those who were directly affected by these unthinkable events. For the families and the friends and those injured. But also, this is why I think I got sick, but also when thinking of the perpetrators of these events, as crazy as it sounds and as difficult as it may be, to actually think, like this character did in the movie toward this girl who was murdered her own mother, to think, actually you're a sad, lonely, probably abused in some way person who needs my compassion. And of course, two of the perpetrators of these events were killed also, or killed themselves. But even so, to think of them as such, I think it's the only way that we can grow, that we can learn something, that we can change in our own hearts, and in a small way change the world. Remember what Yoda said. Yoda said, and part of what I've been feeling is fear. A kind of fear inside of me, like what's happening in the world and what's going to happen to me, and all different kinds of reflections of fear, refractions of fear. And what Yoda said was,
how feel you?
Cold, sir.
Afraid, are you?
No, sir.
See through you. We can.
Be mindful of your feelings.
Your thoughts dwell on your mother.
I miss her.
Afraid to lose her, I think.
What does that got to do with anything?
Everything. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. I sense much fear in you.
and what I was feeling, what I have been feeling is fear, which led to a kind of anger, which led to a kind of hatred, which created suffering in my heart and suffering in my body, in the cells of my body, brought my immune system down so that I literally have suffered in this sickness. And so the headline here at Tipping Points is forgiveness and compassion. Forgiveness and compassion. For whoever it is that we're feeling anger, for whatever it is that we're feeling hatred, for whomever it is in our lives that we feel fear, or whatever it is. Because fear leads to anger, anger hatred, hatred creates and leads to suffering. So the headline is forgiveness and compassion. And so I'm sure every one of us has someone in our lives, including the people involved in these current events, that we need to create some forgiveness for. And so now it's up to you and me to look at our own lives and do the work. As Gandhi said, who, it turns out, Yoda was actually created in the image of Gandhi. As Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. And I'm sure we'd all like to see more compassion and more forgiveness in the world, but it's also the way to healing in our own hearts, in our minds, and in those close to us and those far. So it's up to you to take it from here, to search in your own heart and find out who it is that you might be feeling fear, which leads to anger, which leads to hatred, which leads to our own suffering. So if you think this is true, if you feel like this is something that's helpful, then go ahead and give us a thumbs up, give us a like, and if you don't subscribe already to Tipping Point, hit the subscribe button. There's lots of videos that we do that we hope seek truth and spread love in different ways that you can receive. So let's get better. Hopefully the next time you see me, I'll feel better. I'm working on this stuff, this forgiveness and this compassion. So I'll see you next time.